Okay, so I want to show you the easiest way to waterproof a shower, and that is using the WEDI system. I really find it great for DIYers or somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience with trialing. The preformed base eliminates any problems with slopage, and just the ease of waterproofing this system, you'll find that it's probably the fastest and easiest way to go about waterproofing a shower. So you just want to use a toe jam saw or something, but you want to make this flush with the edge of the floor. Okay, so that's nice and flush with the floor. And then just take a utility knife and just deburr anything around the edges. But as long as you get this flush with the floor, then you're nice and even. That's where you want to set the drain. So when I put the pan in, I can just connect to that. Okay, so measuring the pan, we had planned for the drain to be using the full width, this 36-inch pan. So it should be 18 inches to the drain. If it's not, you're gonna have to cut your pan to make that fit. So in this instance, we're right on 18, so we're fine there. And let's just get our overall width here. So about 41.5. Now you want to make this fairly tight. You don't want to really give yourself any extra room. This needs to be tight against each wall. So 41.5 is our full width. And it will just measure from one side of the wall to the center. And then we'll mark that on our pan. So in this instance, we have 20 and 5/8. So 20 and 5/8 off of the left side. And on the right side, we have 20 and 3/4. So that's pretty dang close. So 20 and 5/8, 41.5 width. That's what we're gonna do. So let's go down and cut that pan. Okay, so we'll take our pan out. This is a 36 by 48.5-inch pan, the WEDI Fundo Primo pan. So you can see here, WEDI Primo. Okay, so we said we were going to use the full width, which is 36 inches. So we're going to be using that full depth into the shower. And then from this side, we said 20 and 5/8. So we need to find the center first. So 24 is the center. And then from that center mark, 20 and 5/8. We'll just mark this with a square. Okay, so we want cutting that off. So we'll cut that first. Just see what that is here. 3 1/4 inches. Now the easiest way to do this is on a table saw, but you can use a circular saw. There's no problem with using that. Okay, then what you want to do is create this rabbet joint. So we're going to adjust our blade. Okay, so we'll adjust the blade down to that rabbet joint, and then we'll also just slide over our guide, because we basically want to recreate that rabbet joint. And then we got to recreate the side cut. That should work there. So that recreates this nice rabbet joint. Now that was the easiest way to go about it, but you can also use a circular, so I'm going to demonstrate that. So we got 41.5 is our total width. Okay, so we're going to be going over a 1/2 inch for our rabbet joint. Okay, then what I would do is adjust your depth for this cut, and then just go ahead and cut. Okay, then at this point you can just actually just score with a utility knife. So not as clean with the circular saw, but definitely sufficient for what we need. So now we can go ahead and install our pan. Okay, so we'll go ahead and dry fit this. It's a little tight on this side here. Okay, so that's all nice and tight. Our drain's pretty centered there. So we're good there. Now we can go ahead and mix our thin set and get our drain assembly on here. But definitely, you want to have this fairly tight because you really want to make this fairly tight because the boards that come down on the wall are going to join right into this rabbet joint. So you don't want it to be too loose, but you do have a little bit of wiggle room. I mean, if it's a 1/4 inch off, it's not the end of the world, but just try to be as tight as you can. That's all I can really say. So this is the drain connection. So this will be our drain, our WEDI drain. So this is a really simple concept. It just has a rubber gasket inside. So this is going to slip over after you get the pan set. So we'll hold these aside. But then it just has a rubber gasket and a slip ring. This paper slip ring allows you to tighten it. So it just comes in 3 components here. So what you want to do is take that rubber gasket, everything off of there. Always use the WEDI sealant, the sealant for this project. Okay, and then put a generous amount on the actual drain receiver here. And then I also like to do a nice bead on the drain. So just make sure that that has a nice bead all the way around there. And we'll just set this in place. Make sure that you see that oozing out on every aspect of that drain. You want to make sure it's well sealed. And then we'll just turn this around. And now this is only going to need to be hand tightened. So you just put your rubber gasket on here, the slip ring, and then the locking nut. And again, this is only hand tightened. You don't have to get a big pair of pliers or anything. There we go. And then on the other side, just smear that sealant nicely on here. So then here, just wipe the excess sealant out of there, and then that's all you need to do. So go ahead and mix some thin set and set the pan. Okay. All right, so for the WEDI pan, to set it on a wood subfloor, you want to use a modified thin set. I'm just using Schluter's All Set, which is basically a modified thin set. I mean, it's mainly used for their products, but it's a modified thin set nonetheless. Just make sure you measure the water. I only need about a half bag to do this floor. Probably won't even need that much, but I'm going to be doing other waterproofing as well. So, you know, to minimize things, I would just go with a half bag. Always measure your water. So, and I would go with like the membrane consistency. You want this to be fairly fluid. You don't want this real thick, unless you're trying to make something level. If you're trying to offset like a 1/4 inch or something like that, maybe make it a little bit thicker. But the important thing is that it's going to bond to that subfloor. Okay, so you can see how loose of a consistency it is. So that's the way I like it, because I think it really bonds well to the pan. But I would go with the membrane setting for mixing the thinset. Okay, so the first step is to dampen your subfloor. So if you're over a wood subfloor, or even if you're on a concrete subfloor, just take a damp sponge and wipe down that surface. This does two things. This basically takes off all the dust, but secondly, it keeps that thinset from just immediately absorbing into the plywood. You want to give that thinset a little bit of time to cure. So wiping this down will make it a lot easier. What we're going to use is a 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch square notch trowel to set the pan. And then the first thing you want to do is use the flat side of the trowel and do what towel setters call burning the thinset into the substrate. So just using that flat side of the trowel and just working it into the substrate. This also makes it a lot easier for spreading the thinset and getting a nice even layer if you do this first, because the trowel kind of glides over the thinset. It makes it a lot easier to get some good trowel lines. Want to do directional troweling, basically having all the ridges in the same direction. Okay, then same thing on the back. Use that flat side of the trowel. Then I'm going to back trowel it, basically the same way that the ridges are on the floor. Okay, then we can just go ahead and set it in place. Okay, then step on this, make sure it's well bonded. We'll go ahead and put our drain assembly in. I don't know if you want to. Yeah. Okay, so this gasket, the beveled edge needs to face up. So we'll squeeze this around our drain. If you need to push this on with a screwdriver, you can. And then you take your locking nut and this threads in, and then this comes with the drain assembly, and this allows you to tighten this. And this is where it's important to have this drain cut at flush with the subfloor, because you want to be able to tighten this. It really just needs to be hand tightened. You don't have to get a wrench on it or anything. But if this was too high, you wouldn't be able to crank this down. So that's why it's important to have the drain pipe even with that subfloor. So now that's sealed, and we'll do a water test after we get all the waterproofing in. Okay, so we got 41.5. We'll just make it 41.25. We don't want to be overly tight. Plus you got the boards coming in on the sides. We'll just cut these. So this is one of the biggest reasons why this is easy, is because it just takes a utility knife. Much easier than cement board or hardy backer with all that dust. It's lightweight. And one nice thing is that this core foam area is completely waterproof as well. So a lot of other boards that are similar to this, the actual core is not waterproof, but this is. So if you were to accidentally just puncture the front of this, it's not going to be a big deal. It's not going to be compromised. Now, obviously, if you went all the way through it, you know, that's going to cause a leak. But it makes it nice for tiling, because if I use a grinder to sharpen up anything, if I hit the front of the board, not a big deal. A lot of the other boards, it's just a surface coating of waterproofing, and if you penetrate that, it's no longer good. But with the WEDI board, it's waterproof all the way through the foam core, which is really nice. Just make sure your dado, your rabbet joint, you want to fill this up with sealant. So just put a large bead. Try to get this insulation out of the way here. So just fill up that entire rabbet joint. And then just make sure that's all tight in there. You can see how some of this is oozing out of that joint. That's what you want to see. Okay, so your first washers, you want to keep up off the floor about 4 inches. You don't want this to be right at the bottom, because you don't want to, basically you don't want to push this board out of that rabbet joint. You want to keep it up about 4 inches. So you just use these washers and screws that come with it. And you just want to compress these washers until they're flush with the, or recessed from the board.
So I wanted to pause here real quick because I wanted to reiterate, I did make a mistake on this video as far as the location of that first row of screws. I'll leave a link in the description of the actual documentation of the installation instructions of this, but you want to be 1 foot off of the floor. And the main reason for that is to prevent that board from going further back into the wall cavity and making a separation between the pan and the actual board. So always pay attention to any new updates of rules that some of these manufacturers makes. And I really highly recommend, if you're a contractor, to get certified installing this system. It'll extend the warranty of the system, and you'll learn a lot and be up to date on their new rules. But I'll leave in the link in the description of the installation instructions. But start with your first row of screws 12 inches off of the main floor.
Let's put a nice generous bead on top of this second board here. Okay, then you can just go ahead and pinch these two boards together with one washer. Okay, so on the side wall, you want to put your walls up first before you put the curb in. So I always go, the edge of it is going to be 38 inches. I always go an inch past that area, and honestly, we're going to be bringing the tile all the way out to the edge of this. So we're at like 41 inches. So I'm just going to make this 41. Well, we don't have to go quite there. We'll go 40 inches just to meet our board here. But you just want it to come past outside of your shower and then butt your curb up to that waterproofing. Any waterproofing that comes outside of the shower area, beyond the towel area, don't worry about it. You can just do some drywall mud over that waterproofing, but I think it's really important to just make sure that everything from the curb in is 100% waterproof. Okay, then going up the wall, you want to put a bead all the way up along here. You can see how that's all beading up there. Okay, so this is a really nice feature of using a foam board like this, because you can just easily find your locations. So just by poking it on your board, you can find the location of your valves and then even your ports. So that's something you can't do with cement board. So now we have the indication of where our valve is and then where our port is. So we'll cut a hole in this. All right, so we're just using a spade bit for your port. And you can cut this with a utility knife, obviously, but a 4.5 inch hole is what you want around your valve. Okay, then we can just puncture this guy. Okay, so I just make this fairly tight around it. And again, you can use a utility knife for that. It's not like you have to use a hole saw. This just makes it a neater cut. Okay, so then anytime you have something really close to the edge of the stud like that, put a cover on this so you don't, or a steel plate so you don't penetrate anything. Okay. All right, so you can piece as many pieces as you want. I only bought 6 boards for this because, you know, I'm trying to save money, just like everyone else. But you can just piece this all in, so you don't need to just have full sheets on here. So just a matter of, you might go through a little bit more sealant if you use more pieces, because you have to put the WEDI sealant on each joint, but not a big deal. So I'm just gonna skip one of these scrap pieces in. This is 9 7/8, 9 3/4. Okay, so we'll measure our curb. We'll make it tight. So we've got 40 and 9/16. So you just want to add thinset to embed this. And then you want to fill that entire rabbet joint. With sealant, I'll just do it on the curb as well, on the sides. Okay, and then put a little bit where it's going to meet the WEDI board here. Now this is considered the lean curb. It's a skinny curb, and the reason I like doing this, so there's two reasons I really like this curb, and one is it's waterproof all the way through, so if I put screws into my shower doors, I don't have to worry about it. And then secondly, I can just get a 4-inch curb top that will go over this, and it'll cover the tile on the other side. So I kind of like a skinnier threshold. If you went with the standard curb, which is 4.5 inches, you're talking about having a curb that's 6.5 inches wide, and I don't really see much reason for that. So it's all preference of what you want for your final look. But yeah, I mean, I like the skinny curb for this type of situation. Okay, so just double check that you're level, and then should pitch all the way in the way that the curb is already designed, but just double check. But you can always adjust any unlevelness with the curb itself, but having the waterproofing, you know, going in is pretty much the ideal way to go. Okay, so we're going to address all the seams. So again, just going over the corner joint. Now I do recommend, if you buy the kit, just get this simple little corner trowel. This really makes it easy to keep the corners nice and sealed. And you have to put a little bit of excess on these washers in the corner here. So this corner trowel really makes it nice to spread it. And then the rule of thumb on the sealant spreading, it needs to be 1 inch past all the washers. So try to get a minimum of a 1 inch band on the other side of the corner, and then on these washers, just have it go past 1 inch past the washers. So I kind of ran out of sealant. I only have one more tube left, and I wanted one tube to make sure I get this floor done so that I can set tile the next day. So I'm going to get another tube, but it's not highly important. It's not going to slow me down missing this part of the waterproofing above here, but the floor is going to be pretty important. My important concept today is just to get the pan done. So you want to go over all your corners again. And this is where I would definitely give yourself a full tube, because this is obviously the most critical part of the whole system. Okay, so just pay attention to your corners. Make sure it looks like you have a continuous bead or just a continuous coverage. And again, like, it's basically 1 inch on the other side of these seams. But just pay attention to these corners and make sure they look like they're all nice and sealed. So then I'll just grab another tube to finish this off. Okay. the hell my 6-inch knife go? Okay, so we're going to use a mixing valve flexi collar for around our valve. So you basically just want to thin set this on. And I'm using an 1/8 by 1/8 inch square notch trowel. So you basically just, if there's a fatter end and there's a skinnier end, the fatter end goes into the cavity, and then you just and then we got some flexi collar sealing tape. These are for our ports. I find this to be really important. It even has like a little rubber gasket on it, so it makes it nice to seal onto your pipe that you fit in here. Might be a little bit overkill for a shower head, but okay, so they don't, are you on?
Yeah.
So they don't make a valve seal like this for the hand port. So I'm just gonna kind of create my own little patch here. All right, and then I'll be able to just cut this out really closely to that valve after I'm done. But I can go ahead and towel directly up around here and then cut out the membrane afterwards. Okay, so then after you set the pan and everything, just put a couple bags of thinset on this. This is just gonna weight down that pan, make sure it stays well bonded. Shouldn't have any problems, but it's just extra insurance. Okay, so we're gonna finish off our WEDI sealant since I ran out. So you want to get all these seams and then all the washers. Okay, so then on this corner bead, I'd recommend just using some WEDI sealant to cover over this corner. You can also use the joint, or I should say the, what would that be? The seam tape that it comes with. But I would just recommend covering this because you want this to be water, you know, you don't want water getting to this corner bead. So you just cover this with the WEDI sealant, and this will prevent that from rusting out if water ever got to it. So then you want to flood test your pan. Now typically it's best to let this sit overnight, 24 hours. Most of us don't have the time for that. So I usually just fill it up while I'm doing my drywall work in the morning and then let it drain. So about 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, I'm actually, or yeah, literally pretty much 2 hours is how long I'm letting the water sit in here. But you just want to use one of these little plugs. Just has a rubber gasket on the side of it, and you just put that in the drain. Okay, so what I recommend after you get the water filled is just put this right on the drain location and measure your water level. So it's 2.5 inches. We're gonna double check this in about an hour, see where we're at with that. But if it obviously went lower, then you have a leak. But what you're looking for is any bubbles coming up out of any areas, because if you see bubbles, that means it's leaking as well. So just pay attention to see if you see any bubbles, and then just measure down to your drain and hold on to that measurement so that you can measure that in another hour or so and see if anything's dropped. Now sometimes if you don't have your plug securely anchored, it can leak through that. So make sure you don't see any bubbles around your drain port. But yeah, so it's just a matter of measuring it and making sure you don't see any bubbles coming out of it, and that should be good. Okay, so about an hour, 2 hours, well, about 2 hours later, let's go ahead and double check our water level. So we still got 2.5 inches. I didn't see any bubbles the whole time it was sitting here, so that means that we should be good to go. Now again, the ultimate test would be to set this overnight and then release it in the morning if you have time. But you know, I've been doing this long enough that I really feel comfortable with the way that I'm installing this, and you know, a couple hours just to flood test it to make sure that there isn't anything abnormal about it works for me. So we'll just go ahead and drain it, let this drain. Okay, so for this drywall seam, I'm going to put some Curdy band over that seam. This does two things. One, it makes sure that's everything waterproof from the shower in. Secondly, it's a good, if your tile doesn't come over this transition, this is almost like a, you know, an advanced version of drywall tape. So you can just go right over this with the drywall mud. So I like to transition this with that Curdy membrane.
So I hope this demonstration has helped you out and gave you some indication of what is involved with installing the shower system. And again, if you have any questions, leave a comment below. I'd be more than happy to help you out with your own project. And be sure to watch the previous videos. I have links in the description for the videos of the beginnings of demo to installing the shower valve, refinagling the moving of the plumbing to put this shower in. So I really implore you to check out those other videos. I think you'll find this very helpful. In our next series of videos, we're going to be continuing to complete this entire bathroom by installing the Ditra mat on the outside, which is a waterproofing membrane for a tile floor. And we're going to be making sure that we also make everything 100% waterproof by using the band to go all the way around the room. I think it's really important to make sure that bathrooms are waterproof before installing tile, especially up against this curb, like I'm going to be putting Curdy band up against that. So this is the final product. And again, please subscribe and click that bell notification bell on the subscribe button. It'll make sure that you get the next video that comes out. So thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next one.